The fishing industry has convinced millions of people that paying $300 for a rod somehow transfers skill into their hands. It doesn't. Some of the cheapest rods on the market were designed by tournament professionals who needed backup gear that performed under pressure. These weren't afterthoughts. They were engineered to win. The difference between a $50 rod and a $300 rod often comes down to cosmetics, brand prestige, and marketing budgets, not fish-catching ability. Today, you're going to learn exactly which budget rods outperform their price tags by a factor most people would never believe. The first rod on this list is something most serious anglers either swear by or completely underestimate, and that's the Ugly Stik GX2O. Now, the name doesn't help. It sounds like something you'd find in a clearance bin at a big box store, and honestly, you often will. But here's what most people don't understand about this rod. The GX2O uses a graphite and fiberglass composite blank that solves a problem most budget rods can't figure out. How to give you sensitivity without making the rod fragile. Pure graphite is sensitive. You can feel every pebble on the bottom, every nut from a curious fish. But pure graphite also snaps under pressure, especially when you're fighting something heavy or when you make a mistake during a hook set. Fiberglass is tough. It bends, absorbs shock, and survives abuse that would shatter a graphite rod. But fiberglass is also dull. It muffles the subtle vibrations that tell you a fish is interested before it fully commits. The GX2O combines both materials in a way that gives you the best of each. You get sensitivity through the graphite core and durability through the fiberglass outer layer. This isn't a compromise. It's an engineering solution. What makes this rod catch more fish isn't just the material. It's what that material allows you to do. Most beginners lose fish because they either miss the bite entirely or they set the hook too hard and snap their line. The GX2O gives you a wider margin for error. You feel the bite clearly enough to react, but the rod's forgiving action absorbs some of the shock if you overreact. This means more successful hook sets and fewer lost fish. Tournament anglers keep these in their boats as backups because they know the GX2O won't fail when something goes wrong with their primary setup. That alone tells you something. When professionals who can afford anything still choose to carry this rod, price becomes irrelevant. Performance is what matters. The rod typically sells for between $30 and $45 depending on the length and action you choose. Compare that to the fish you won't lose over the next 5 years because your rod actually communicates what's happening underwater. That's not spending money. That's investing it. Another rod worth serious attention is the KastKing Perigee II. And the reason has nothing to do with the brand's aggressive marketing. What makes this rod genuinely useful is a feature that most anglers don't even know exists at this price point. Interchangeable tips. The Perigee II comes with 2 different tips that you can swap depending on what you're fishing for. One tip is designed for sensitivity when you're targeting species that bite light and subtle. The other tip provides more backbone for setting hooks into harder mouths or fighting stronger fish. This sounds like a small thing until you realize what it actually means for your catch rate. Most anglers own one rod and try to make it work for everything. They buy a medium-action spinning rod because it's supposedly versatile, and then they struggle when they're fishing for species that require something different. They miss bites because their rod is too stiff. They lose fish because their rod is too soft. The Perigee II eliminates this problem without requiring you to buy multiple rods. You carry one rod body and 2 tips, and you can switch between them in seconds. This means you can adjust to conditions on the water instead of wishing you'd brought different gear. That adaptability translates directly into more fish. The construction quality on this rod also punches above its weight. You get stainless steel guides with ceramic inserts, which reduce line friction and prevent those tiny nicks that weaken your line over time. The reel seat is solid, not the wobbly plastic you find on some budget rods that eventually loosens and creates play between your reel and your rod. The cork handle is actual cork, not the foam substitute that absorbs water and gets slippery. When wet, all of this for under $60. The Perigi II isn't a cheap rod that happens to work. It's a well-designed rod that happens to be cheap. If you're the kind of person who wants to understand why something works, not just follow recommendations blindly, this is where it gets interesting. One of the most overlooked rods in the budget category is the Shimano Salura. Shimano is a Japanese company, and Japanese manufacturing has a specific philosophy around quality control that most Western companies don't match. The concept is called Kaizen, which means continuous improvement. Every product, including their entry-level gear, goes through the same quality standards as their premium equipment. The difference between a cheap Shimano and an expensive Shimano isn't build quality, it's materials and features. The cheap rod is still built correctly. It's just built with less exotic components. The Salura proves this principle. It's a simple rod with no flashy features, but everything on it works exactly as intended. The guides are aligned perfectly. The blank is consistent from one rod to the next. The action matches the specifications on the label. This might sound basic, but if you've ever bought a truly cheap rod from a no-name brand, you know that consistency is rare. You might get a good one, or you might get one where the guides are crooked, the blank has dead spots, or the action feels nothing like what the package promised. With Shimano, even at the entry level, you get what you pay for. And what you pay for is about $35. The Salura's strength is its reliability. It's not going to surprise you with exceptional sensitivity or revolutionary action. But it's also not going to fail you at the worst possible moment. It casts predictably. It sets hooks cleanly. It handles fish without unexpected weaknesses. For anglers who are still developing their skills, this consistency is worth more than fancy features they don't know how to use yet. You learn faster when your equipment behaves the same way every time. You build muscle memory. You develop instincts. A reliable cheap rod accelerates your growth as an angler more than an unpredictable expensive one ever could. The Abu Garcia Vengeance is another rod that deserves attention, and the reason is a material called IM6 graphite. Now, graphite ratings can get confusing. You'll see IM6, M7, IM8, and higher numbers thrown around in marketing materials, and most of it is designed to make you think higher numbers mean better rods worth more money. The reality is more nuanced. Higher modulus graphite is stiffer for its weight, which means manufacturers can build thinner, lighter blanks. But stiffer isn't always better, and thinner isn't always stronger. M6 graphite represents a balance point where you get meaningful sensitivity without sacrificing durability or paying a premium for diminishing returns. The Vengeance uses IM6 graphite throughout its entire blank, not just in certain sections. This gives you consistent sensitivity from the tip all the way through the handle. When a fish touches your bait, that vibration travels up the rod and into your hand without getting lost along the way. This matters because many bites, especially from cautious fish, are subtle. They don't slam your bait and run. They mouth it, taste it, and decide whether to commit. If your rod can't transmit that initial contact, you don't know there's a fish until it's already swallowed your hook, gut-hooked itself, or decided your bait wasn't worth eating and let go. Sensitivity buys you time. Time to set the hook before the fish spits your bait. Time to adjust your presentation. Time to make decisions instead of just reacting to whatever happens. The Vengeance typically costs between $40 and $55. At that price, you're not paying for Abu Garcia's brand name. You're paying for a thoughtfully engineered tool that solves a specific problem. The problem is detecting bites that most budget rods miss. The solution is consistent, quality graphite construction that doesn't cut corners where it matters. If you're finding value in this breakdown, take a second to subscribe. This channel is for people who want to make smarter decisions about their gear, their time, and their results on the water. Every video is designed to give you an edge that most anglers never find. One of the most powerful choices you can make is the Berkeley Lightning Rod, and the story behind this rod explains why it catches fish so well. Berkeley is primarily known for their line and their soft plastics. They're a tackle company, but they also employ professional anglers who fish tournaments for a living. When Berkeley decided to design a rod, they didn't hire industrial designers who had never fished. They worked with the people who actually knew what mattered on the water. The lightning rod is the result of that collaboration. What makes this rod special is its fast tip with moderate backbone. This is a specific action profile that's hard to find in budget rods because it requires careful tapering of the blank. A fast tip means the top section of the rod bends easily, which gives you sensitivity and quick response during hook sets. Moderate backbone means the lower section of the rod is stiffer, which gives you leverage and power when fighting fish. This combination allows you to detect subtle bites and set hooks quickly, while still having the strength to control a fish once it's on. Many budget rods give you one or the other. They're either whippy throughout, which makes fighting fish difficult, or they're stiff throughout, which makes detecting bites nearly impossible. The lightning rod gets this balance right at a price point under $50. And because Berkeley designed it for tournament use, the rod also includes features that reduce fatigue during long days of fishing. The handle is ergonomic. The weight is distributed to minimize strain on your wrist. The guides are positioned to optimize line flow during casts. None of these individual features change your catch rate dramatically on their own, but combined over hours of fishing, they add up. You fish longer without getting tired. You make better casts because you're not fighting your equipment. You stay focused because nothing about the rod is annoying you. Small advantages compound over time. The Daiwa Airdex represents another category entirely, and understanding why requires knowing what usually separates budget rods from premium ones. The single most noticeable difference when you pick up an expensive rod is weight. Premium rods feel lighter because they use higher-grade carbon fiber, more sophisticated blank construction, and carefully chosen components. This light weight isn't just about comfort. It's about sensitivity and responsiveness. A lighter rod transmits vibrations more efficiently because there's less mass dampening the signal. It also responds faster to your movements, which means quicker hook sets and more accurate casts. The problem is that light weight usually costs money, a lot of money. The Airdex breaks this pattern. Daiwa used a braiding technology for the blank that reduces weight without sacrificing strength. The rod feels significantly lighter than other budget options, closer to rods costing twice as much. This isn't marketing exaggeration. You can verify it yourself by holding the Airdex against any comparable budget rod. The difference is immediately obvious, and that difference translates into performance advantages that accumulate every time you fish. You feel more, you react faster, you cast farther with less effort. You don't get fatigued as quickly. Over the course of a full day on the water, the Airdex gives you hundreds of small advantages that other budget rods simply can't match. The rod typically costs between $50 and $70 depending on the model. For that price, you're getting weight reduction technology that was exclusive to premium rods just a few years ago. Fishing gear, like all technology, gets cheaper over time as manufacturing improves. The Airdex represents the current edge of that curve, where yesterday's premium feature becomes today's budget option. Smart anglers recognize these moments and take advantage of them. For those who fish saltwater or want a rod that can handle bigger species, the Penn Squadron III deserves serious consideration. Saltwater fishing typically requires more expensive gear because the environment is harsher. Salt corrodes metal. Larger fish put more stress on components. Conditions change faster and more dramatically. Most budget rods aren't built to handle these demands. They rust, they fail, they leave you with a broken rod and a lost fish at the worst possible time. The Squadron III was specifically engineered to solve this problem. Penn used graphite composite construction with stainless steel guides specifically treated to resist salt corrosion. The reel seat is sealed to prevent salt intrusion. The blank is designed to handle the heavier line weights and stronger hook sets that saltwater fishing requires. You get a rod that can legitimately handle inshore saltwater species at a price point that freshwater anglers would find reasonable. This opens up an entirely new world of fishing opportunities for people who assumed saltwater gear was beyond their budget. And here's what most people don't realize. A rod built to handle saltwater punishment will last significantly longer in freshwater conditions. The extra durability isn't wasted if you never fish salt. It just means your rod survives abuse that would destroy lesser equipment. The Squadron III typically costs between $60 and $80. Compare that to dedicated saltwater rods that start at $150 and climb quickly into the multiple hundreds. The Squadron III isn't the best saltwater rod ever made, but it's a completely functional saltwater rod at a price that makes no sense when you compare it to the competition. Penn has a reputation to protect. They've been making fishing equipment for over 90 years. They don't release products that fail, even at their entry price points. That institutional quality control is part of what you're buying, even if it doesn't appear on the spec sheet. If you're still watching, you're clearly someone who takes this seriously. Drop a comment below telling me which rod you're most interested in trying. The conversation in the comments is always valuable because other anglers share their experiences with specific rods, specific conditions, and specific techniques. This is a community of people who think before they buy. The Lew's Mach Crush Speed Stick is a rod that most beginners have never heard of, and that's exactly why it belongs on this list. Lew's is a company that primarily serves tournament bass anglers. Their gear is designed for competition, which means it has to perform under pressure with no margin for error. The Mach Crush is their entry point into that ecosystem, and it carries the same design philosophy as their premium tournament rods at a fraction of the cost. What separates tournament rods from recreational rods is sensitivity and precision. Tournament anglers need to detect bites that most people would miss entirely. They need to set hooks on fish that barely touch their bait. They need to feel the difference between a brush pile, a rock, and a fish holding near structure. The Mach Crush delivers this level of sensitivity through a premium-grade carbon blank that would cost considerably more from other brands. The guides are Fuji-style stainless steel with aluminum oxide inserts, which is the industry standard for performance fishing. The handle is EVA foam with ergonomic shaping that allows all-day use without fatigue. The Mach Crush typically costs between $70 and $90. This is at the higher end of what most people would call budget, but consider what you're getting. This is a tournament-capable rod from a tournament-focused company. It's not an afterthought or a compromise. It's a deliberate product designed to compete at the highest levels of the sport. For anglers who want to develop serious skills and eventually fish competitively, starting with a Mach Crush means you're not learning on inferior equipment. You're learning on gear that will still serve you years later when your skills have improved dramatically. The St. Croix Bass X represents something different, a premium brand's attempt to capture the budget market. St. Croix is known for handcrafted rods made in the United States using premium components. Their premium rods cost $200 and up. The Bass X is their answer to people who want St. Croix quality without St. Croix prices. And here's what makes this interesting. St. Croix couldn't release a bad rod with their name on it. Their entire reputation is built on quality, so even their budget offering had to meet standards that other companies don't even try to match. The Bass X uses a SCII graphite blank, which is St. Croix's designation, for their mid-tier carbon fiber. It's not their top material, but it's still better than what most budget rods use. The guides are Kigen Master Hand 3D guides with aluminum oxide inserts. The handle is premium-grade cork. The fit and finish is noticeably better than comparably priced rods from other brands. You can see it in the guide wraps, feel it in the handle, and notice it in how the rod balances in your hand. These details don't appear on spec sheets, but they matter. They're the difference between equipment that feels cheap and equipment that feels professional. The Bass X typically costs between $80 and $100. This is premium budget pricing, no question. But you're buying into Scent. Kruai's quality standards, their warranty support, and their reputation for standing behind their products. If you plan to fish seriously for years, that peace of mind has real value. You're not gambling on whether your equipment will hold up. You're buying from a company that has spent decades proving that their products are built to last. The final rod on this list is one that carries decades of engineering refinement behind it: the Fenwick Eagle. Fenwick has been making fishing rods since 1952. They pioneered the use of graphite in rod construction back in the 1970s. They've had longer to figure out what works than almost any other American rod company. The Eagle represents everything they've learned about building an effective, durable, affordable fishing rod. What makes the Eagle catch fish is its consistency. Fenwick has been refining this rod for years, eliminating problems, improving weak points, and optimizing the design based on decades of feedback from anglers. The current Eagle isn't the same rod that Fenwick sold 10 years ago. It's better. It benefits from every lesson learned, every complaint addressed, every improvement discovered through millions of hours of real-world use. This kind of iterative development produces a level of refinement that new rod designs simply can't match. A first-generation budget rod from a new company might have great ideas, but it hasn't been tested and improved through years of actual fishing. The Eagle has. The rod uses Fenwick's HM graphite blank technology, which delivers sensitivity and responsiveness while maintaining durability. The guides are stainless steel with aluminum oxide inserts. The handle is high-quality cork with a comfortable, ergonomic shape. Everything about the Eagle feels like it belongs on a more expensive rod, because everything about it has been refined over decades of production. Fenwick knows exactly what works at this price point, because they've had longer to figure it out than anyone else. The Eagle typically costs between $50 and $70. For that price, you're buying decades of engineering refinement, a proven design, and the backing of a company that has been building quality fishing rods since before most other brands existed. There's value in that heritage, not because old automatically means good, but because old and still popular means something has been done right for a very long time. If you've made it this far, you understand something that most anglers never figure out. The price tag on your rod doesn't determine how many fish you catch. Technique matters. Understanding matters. Choosing the right tool for the job matters. Spending $300 on a rod that wasn't designed for what you're doing matters a lot less than spending $50 on a rod that was. Here's my challenge to you. Don't try to buy all 10 rods on this list. That defeats the purpose. Instead, look at how you actually fish. What species do you target most often? What conditions do you encounter? What weaknesses in your current setup cost you fish? Then choose one rod from this list that solves your specific problem. Maybe you need the sensitivity of the Abu Garcia Vengeance. Maybe you need the versatility of the cast King Perigee II. Maybe you need the saltwater durability of the Penn Squadron III. One well-chosen rod will improve your catch rate more than a collection of random gear ever could. The anglers who catch the most fish aren't the ones with the most expensive equipment. They're the ones who understand what their equipment does and how to use it effectively. They're the ones who make smart decisions instead of just spending money. They're the ones who realize that fishing success comes from knowledge and skill, not from brand names and price tags. You now have that knowledge. The question is what you're going to do with it. Pick one rod, learn everything about it, master its strengths, work around its limitations. Catch more fish than you ever thought possible with equipment that cost less than most people spend on tackle they'll never use. That's how you beat the system. That's how you fish smarter. And that's how you turn a cheap rod into an unfair